Taryn, and how many properties do you need to retire? I mean, look, how long is a piece of string, right? And most people are going, well, how do I know? So this is going to be some big picture stuff. And when it comes to specific things like exactly what the property profile is going to look like, the criteria, and anything else, I really encourage you to reach out to us, do a strategy call, join one of our events, order the book so you can find out more specifically what suits you. And don't get fanciful. If you're looking for the uplift with the growth and the cash flow, let's build the unicorn portfolio rather than look for the unicorn. And that's really, really important. So, number one thing to work out how many properties you need to retire. Firstly, look at how much cash flow you're going to need. Do you need 100 grand to retire? Now, 100 grand to retire means two things. Now, maybe $50,000 outside of super and $50,000 inside of super. It could mean $100,000 just outside of super because you've got no money in super at the moment. You could be retiring the next 5 years. You could be retiring the next 15 years. Whatever your timeline is, we can work that out. Whatever your outside, inside super, we can build a plan. And that's what Unicorn Commercial Property does. That's what Helen Tarrant does. This is my specialty. Build out the plan, help you to execute, and help you implement. And that's the most fastest way, most convenient way to get you there. Now, so let's say you got $100,000. And let's say that's outside of super. Because we're at a high interest environment, I want you to times that by 1.4. So that's 140, then times by 10. So it's whatever it is that you want now. So 100,000 times basically by 10 and add 40%, right? So that's $100,000 means you need $1 million normally in a deposit. If it was an ordinary situation where we had 3 to 4% interest rate. But now our interest rate's at 6 to 7% soon, maybe, and it may plateau out and it may come down to 5.5%. But during this time, you need to add an extra 40%. So that is the true cost of what that interest rate is costing you. Extra 40% to get to that 100K goal. Now that's $1.4 million you're going to need in deposit or equity. So cash deposit or equity for you to retire on $100,000. Now, 1.4 million gives you on a lease stock loan, which is not looking at you for servicing. So if you have residential and principal home, all of that, don't worry about it. Just look at the numbers of that 1.4. That's your focus now. 1.4 million. How do I get there? How can I accumulate that? 1.4 equals $3.5 million in a portfolio. Now, that's really, really important, really interesting to look at, is because now you've got the 100K, you've got 1.4 million, now 3.5 in terms of a portfolio build. Now, those things take design. What does $3.5 million need to look like? Well, the thing is, in order to get your 100K, you have to clear a margin between what the tenant pays you in rent, so your net yield, the net return in cash, minus what you pay out to the bank in terms of an interest rate. And now that gap is typically 2 to 3% interest rate difference. So you need to get a yield of 7% overall on the 3.5. So it doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a $3.5 million property yielding at 7%. You can, but you've got all your eggs in one basket, right? So you've got 3.5 right in there. If you're getting a 7% portfolio, you need to be able to be at an interest rate of 5%. Now, we're not at an interest rate of 5%. We're at 6 to 6.5 currently in this market. So you need to aim for a property portfolio return overall of 8%. Now, you're not going to get that tomorrow. We now add in timeline. So timeline is how long you want to do this before you retire and go, that's it, 3.5 mil, 1.4 million, done and dusted, let's go kind of thing. In order to do that, you got to work out how long you want to retire, right? If you've got $200,000 now and you don't have any equity, you've got maybe one residential property, or you don't have anything, you've got some money in super and that's it, it's probably going to take you 10 to 15 years for you to get there. And that metrics is going to change, right? Because interest rates will go up, interest rates will come down, but just remember the general goal is that 1.4 million. Now that 1.4 million might go down because interest rate might go back down to really, really low rates of 3%, or it might be 1.6 million with inflation continuing, maybe interest rate holding still, maybe interest rates going up, right? That may change over time. But the value of money today, you need 1.4 million. So if you've got 200,000, it's probably going to take you 10 to 15 years. If you have 500,000 and you've got some money in super, even if it's 100 or 200K, it's probably going to halve that journey for you. It's probably going to be about 7 to 9 years for you to get there. And if you've got close to $1 million, 800, 900,000. It's probably doable within a 5 to 7 year period. And of course, if you already got an unencumbered property, or if you've got enough equity in a couple of properties at 1.4 million and you are happy to liquidate and sell, you can literally get there within the next 12 months. And that's what we're equipped to do here at Unicorn Commercial Property with myself, is to actually help you build that portfolio. Now, just remember, it's growing a portfolio. It's not just buying something at it, because now if you want 8%, right? 8%, you're going to go to an extreme regional town. It's not really going to work. It's not really going to work. But if you are able to build, say for a 5-year period or for a 7 or even 10-year period, remember a 6% yielding property after 3 rental increases, just that even 3% becomes 6.5 and a bit more. So that means that buying the property today at 6% and allowing a 3 rental increases, that for some people maybe 2 years, for some of them maybe 2 to 3 years, depending on the lease. So it is about a 2 to 3 year journey. You're at 6.5, right? With compounded over 5 years, it's a 7% yield. If you've got a 10-year journey and you want to get to 8%, it's not that hard. And if you've got a 5-year journey and you need to get to 8%, you start off with a 7%, right? So overall, you're building a portfolio, and in there, you're going to need some growth properties, which will probably be 5 to 6%. You're going to have some cash flow properties, which will probably be 7.5%. You're going to have something in between. You might have an uplift to be able to get you more up there. But that on the whole is how you look at your metrics. So you take what you want. So whether it's 200, 250, 500, 50,000, you times it by 10 to get to the baseline. Then you need to add a margin on top of it because of the interest rate. And at the moment, that's 40% because of the way that it's compounded over time. And don't ask me how I worked that out, because I worked it out from doing it and doing the numbers and working with literally hundreds of everyday Australians, just like yourself, how to put their portfolio together, is working that out, right? Then you got to work out, what does that work out in terms of my leverage? If I can leverage better, then I may not need 1.4 million. If I am a doctor and I'm earning $1 million a year or $500,000 a year and I don't have that much debt, then I can easily get there tomorrow, right? But if you're a doctor, you probably want to build $1 million in passive income. So that's very, very different. So we do a whole range of people doing, upwards and downwards and across as well. So moving forward, if you want to then now split it into super, part of it in super and part of it outside super. And I think that's a really smart thing to do, is really to design a super strategy on top of your outside of super strategy, because outside of super strategies can change over time and it's impacted by life that you cannot sometimes control. You have, death of a family member, your children being sick, you lose a job, something happens to your other investments, you have to move, whatever it is, right? And that can stop or hinder your investment journey. But in super, because it's quarantined, sometimes it's better to look at that individually as a strategy. So for example, you want to build $100,000 in super. One of the ways to do it is you've got to go to 3 properties. In super, the best way to actually get to that end is 3 properties. And 3 properties, and you buy every 3 to 4 years is another property. So the way you do it is you've got some money in super. If you can contribute to that, that's the best way, right? The first lot of properties and money you have in super is not only your industry super, but money you can contribute in the next 4 to 5 years to get you head started. After that, if you choose not to contribute because you've changed a job or something else, that's fine. But the next 4 to 5 years is really important in the head start in terms of your super. So what does that mean for you? It means that number one, you take whatever you have, let's say 200, 250,000 in super. You take it out of your industry fund, you put it into a self-managed super fund. Then you take that money and you go, all right, I'm going to go and leverage as much as I can. Yes, there is going to be a higher interest rate. And at the moment, that's 7 to 8%. But you're still going to get growth. The property's still going to self-sustain. You're going to contribute, which will continue to bring the repayments down to more principal, right? That's the whole point. That's why the next 4 or 5 years is really important. So you start building by buying one property, and that may be 650,000 or 200 grand or 250 grand, 650,000. If you are not doing a huge amount of contributions, you try to find the highest yielding property you can. If you are not doing contribution. Now, there's a lot of variables here, and super is something that's got to be planned really carefully, right? So if you are young and you're doing in your 30s or early 40s, it's better that you put a growth property in there. Now, once you've done the growth property, you can hold it for 10 years, sell it to pay down your other 2. So the idea is it's a 10-year journey in super. You have 1 cash flow property and 2 growth properties. And the idea is the sooner you get a growth property in there, the sooner you let the time to brew and let time in the market. When you actually cash out, you keep 2. You sell 1 out of the 3 and you keep 2, right? So therefore, you pay down, use what you can. So if you can sustain better repayments, then in the beginning, you want to do growth properties, right? If you can sustain it. If you can't, you're not contributing much, do cash flow. If you can sustain it, do growth first. Give it time for the 10 years for it to grow. Do the cash flow next, and then do another growth one, right? So at the end, you have one that's grown exponentially, pays down everything else. Then you have the cash flow paid off, your cash flow property paid off, and you've got a growth property there that's partially paid off. That's going to give you the cash flow, that 50 or 100K, right? I always say you've got to have a goal of building 100K passive income through your super. And that's a totally different conversation to building it outside of super. It's very complicated how much you're going to need to retire, but that's where I'm here for. I'm here to help you work it out. So reach out to me, helen@unicorn.com.au. Let's jump on a strategy call. Let's discuss what is it that you need, the specifics around the type of property. Let's build that plan, build that pathway, and let us help you build that cash flow rich portfolio so that you can retire sooner. Real metrics, real clarity, real property deals, and real strategies you can follow and implement in this murky market of volatility, right? In the meantime, hit the bell, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.